Welcome to the show. My name is Charlton with Big C. This is Charlton and Big C Sports coming to you worldwide on the iHeartRadio network. And today is a beautiful October the 13th, 2016. And I want to say, all you good old boys out in the universe, I think they voted Charlton and Big C Sports #1 in the galaxy, Big C, in the universe. Which one was the Big C you good old boys voted? Was it galaxy or universe, Big C?
Well, we love the universe, Charlton, because that means we're universe and all over the place. You know, you get us on the Enterprise, you get us on the International Space Station, Charlton.
That sounds good.
Everybody out there is paying attention.
That sounds good. And we are the #1 media company in the United States with iHeartMedia. And so also I want to thank you good old boys down in Latin America. So thank you and bienvenidos to you, as well as your good old boys out in London, England, and Paris, France. Of course, the great country of Canada, Big C. Canada has it going on with their hockey teams, the Maple Leafs, and also with the Blue Jays. So we know a lot of good mojo happening to the good old boys in Canada. And of course, the good old boys in the great United States, the land of the free and the home of the brave. In fact, if you're brave enough like Donald Trump, you can grab people by the crotch, pull them by the hair, and tell them all the true things you want to tell them, and Giuliani will defend you, Big C. Isn't that crazy? Giuliani wants to do search and frisk, and he defends Donald Trump for searching and frisking women. Big C, your thoughts on Giuliani and Donald Trump?
Well, that lets you know the intelligence of the former mayor of New York, Charlton, and that senility has not escaped him at all. You know, to sit there and bang Donald Trump on the, you know, the thing that bothers me the most, Charlton, is that Donald Trump is walking around lying and saying that these are all allegations.
Yeah.
He says what we heard on tape is not him.
Yeah.
And not what he did. It's his locker room talk.
Yeah.
And speaking of locker room, Donald Trump is bagged by Tom Brady.
Who?
The phenomenal NFL quarterback.
The great quarterback, Tom Brady? Not Tom.
Tom Brady.
Not Tom, Big C.
But Tom's not going to come under fire. I wonder how would Tom feel if Donald Trump walked up and grabbed his wife in the crotch.
Yeah.
You know, would he still be a backer of Donald Trump?
Yeah.
Or even a sister of his? You know, you think about that. Donald Trump is an atrocious human being.
Yeah.
And to have these people backing him saying it's just banter, he's never done this, and the lies that he's telling, the media perpetuates it.
Yeah.
But Donald Trump is an embarrassment to our country, to our people, and totally disrespectful to our women.
Yeah, and when you think about that, for any man out there that has a mother, and I assume you have a mother unless you're Jesus Christ, Big C. If you have a mother or a wife or a daughter or a girlfriend or wives and girlfriends, such as Donald's situation, just tell him that any man can grab him by the crotch. And he used a more crude word, but if you think that's funny, it's actually called sexual assault. Look it up, and look at how many men are actually sitting in a jail cell someplace because they were prosecuted. And here's a guy that's trying to be the most powerful man in the world. I don't care if you're Democrat or Republican, but if you're saying it's okay, just take your mom to his house and hope that she gets out okay, because I think that's despicable behavior. And as Donald Trump, in his own words, and Mayor Giuliani, they call it thuggish behavior. So Donald Trump's thuggish behavior, and you're going to vote for that, is crazy. And also, speaking of great things, this section is sponsored by your Northern California Cadillac dealer, home of the all-new Cadillac Escalade, the standard of the world. And when you go down and test drive that Cadillac, tell them you want the one that Big C drove, because that's the one that they all, you know, they're going to have to vacuum it before they give it to you. And I just don't understand, Big C. Every Cadillac Escalade I see in California is nice and shiny. I think the good old boys call it bling. Is that what it's called, bling? What do you guys call it down south, Big C?
We call it an all-natural. Charlton, and I'll tell you something today. I saw a commercial on television.
Yeah.
Firestone Tires.
Yeah.
Is out muddying up trucks. You know, the trucks are made from mud. You know, like my Escalade.
That's so funny.
But all of a sudden, I'm seeing a national commercial following you on that. You know, so Firestone is out there telling the boys to take their trucks out.
That is so funny. That's
you know,
so funny.
It's amazing. First, I got Julio Jones copping me on fishing from the Atlanta Falcons.
Yeah.
Now I got Firestone wanting to go out and muddy up trucks.
That is so funny. Hey, well, you know what's funny? That's an actor. I think his name is Matthew McConaughey. Really good actor, Big C. He actually has a scene in one of his commercials. It's not Cadillac, but he actually has him jumping into a swimming pool or something of that nature, Big C. Maybe that's what Cadillac needs to do to your Escalade, dump it in the pool, Big C, to clean it off every now and then. But speaking of...
They're getting a lot of interest talking on that color car now.
That is so funny, Big C. And speaking of some of the great action happening in the world of sports, we actually have a great baseball game going on, and that's going to be the Los Angeles Dodgers and that's going to also go up against the Washington Nationals. I would love to see the Dodgers from the West Coast prevail, but I also would love to see Dusty Baker taking the Nationals up against the Cubs in the NLCS Big C. We know we have Scherzer and also Hill going at it on the Hill, but Scherzer for Washington, he's their ace in the whole Big C. That's going to be a tough game for the Dodgers because they're not starting Kershaw, they're starting Hill, and traveling all across the country in our nation's capital, Big C. In fact, if you look at Washington, they're actually relaxed, and they're looking forward to this because they have it at home, Big C. Your thoughts, does that even give them an edge, or does the Dodgers have an edge because they're away from home, Big C? Your thoughts on that game?
Well, I think the real story, Charlton, is that the young bats for Washington need to break out. You're going to have to get some hits, and that's what we're looking at in tonight's game. I like Worth out in left field.
Yeah.
Excellent player. Has been in the World Series before with the Philadelphia Phillies. But Harper, he's going to have to come unhinged tonight. He's going to have to be the man at the plate for a change for the Nationals. Dusty Baker's a marvelous manager.
Oh, amazing.
Should be considered for Manager of the Year.
Yeah.
You got he and Joe Madden at the top of the heap. But, when you look at the Dodgers and what they've done, Yasiel Puig really hasn't done anything in this series, even though he's been intentionally walked 4 times.
Oh, yeah.
But, he has a big bat that can come uncorked.
Yeah.
The Dodgers as a whole, Gonzalez is a solid hitter. But, this is a marvelous series. Come down to Game 5, Charlton. This is what baseball is all about.
Yeah.
You have a 5-game series, and every game matters.
Well, Big C, when you talk about every game matters, think about Dusty Baker, what he's done. He took the San Francisco Giants to the World Series, and they lost to Anaheim, and he took a lot of flack out here. But since they cut that man from San Francisco, he had him always competing in the West out here in California, Big C. He took the Cubs to the playoffs also. We know what happened with the bad luck with the fan reaching out, grabbing a ball that probably could have. Yeah, that's a horrible thing of luck there. And now look at Dusty Baker again. He went to Cincinnati, had success with Cincinnati, got them into the playoffs. Now he's doing his same thing going over again for Washington, for the Nationals in the nation's capital. I don't think Dusty gets a lot of credit for how good he's been, not just with one organization, but he's taken everyone that he's managed to the playoffs, Big C. Talk about what he means as a player, and I know he's African-American. There's not a lot of African-American managers in the major leagues, Big C, but I just think he's going up against that good old boy mentality, and he's done it for more than just one team. He's like Tommy Lasorda, but Lasorda's only taken the A's and also the Cardinals to the playoffs, Big C. Yeah, your thoughts on Dusty Baker? Is he a little bit less respected than some of his counterparts, Big C?
I honestly think that he is, Charlton. When you think about having a manager take 4 teams to the playoffs and going to the World Series at least once, that's unheard of, in this modern age of sports.
Yeah.
And to be consistent about it, to build consistent winners, to have players respect you and understand and play the type of ball that you demand of them.
Yeah.
We see some managers hang around forever, Charlton, and never win. But here's Dusty Baker, who has been consistent wherever he's gone. And he hasn't had that chance to spend 7, 8 years, 10 years, a decade with an organization. He's doing it all in 2 to 3 years, turning organizations around, Charlton, getting them into the playoffs. And so he's doing things in that quick turn fix, and people are not happy with it. But, there is a double standard. When you look at it, we see that in all professional sports. When it comes to African-American leadership, you want instantaneously winning without, losing.
Yeah.
But you can get that from a white coach. We've talked about Jeff Fisher for many years, not being productive. You look around the NBA, how many white head coaches are there in the NBA that never make the playoffs?
Yeah.
But they keep recycling and getting jobs, Charlton. They move. We've looked at this offensive coordinator movement in the NFL, where you're an offensive coordinator with 8 teams before your career ends, and you never make the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Why you keep getting hired for the same position and you can't win? You had to get fired from the previous position to get the new one, Charlton.
Well, Big C, I think that's so powerful because we just want to bring, shine a spotlight onto what happens in the world of sports, and I just want people to understand that Dusty also had a medical issue, and a lot of people do, but it didn't stop him. He got his treatment, and he came on back, and he has another team on the verge again of the NLCS, and I just think that's incredible no matter who you are. I just want to see this man get the respect that a lot of other counterparts have gotten, Big C. But again, I just want to ask you again, with the Dodgers being, I would say they're the marquee team on the West Coast, even though the Giants have had more success, Big C, on the West Coast since they both left from the East Coast to the West Coast. What's the thought? And you're down south. I know you guys, all you really care about is Alabama football. But when you guys call a timeout, I'm sure you can get in time from practice, you and Nick Saban, to watch some of the baseball going on. What's the thought of the Dodgers? Clayton Kershaw, he's one of the, I guess, the marquee paid players in baseball. But when it comes to when it really counts, he's not really consistent at trying to be a closer. He's not starting tonight. But does he strike fear in the hearts of any baseball team? Unlike the Chapman when he's closing for the Cubs, do you think that Kershaw's kind of lost some of his luster, Big C, at all?
Well, I don't think so. You know, if you look at utilizing Kershaw tonight, all you want the starter to do is get into the 5th or 6th inning.
Yeah.
Now, if you can bring in a rested Kershaw from the 6th inning on, Charlton, you're bringing a starting pitcher who has all his full.
Yeah, go right ahead, Big C. I know we're dealing with a little bit of sound difficulty coming from Big C down in the South, Big C, but we'll get you back on again. Again, the question with Kershaw, I know he's been paid top dollar to help the Dodgers get back into the World Series. They haven't been there since 1988. But also, you look at a player who has all the things going for him, Big C, and I wonder if they can get Hill past maybe the 4th or 5th inning, if they would even think about bringing in someone like Kershaw, who's the top paid player for the Dodgers, but he doesn't really have the credentials yet lately because they haven't been to the World Series with him. Your thoughts again on that, Big C?
Well, Charlton, this is the guy that you want to bring out of the bullpen after about the 5th or 6th inning.
Yeah.
You know, this is a starting pitcher who understands what batters do.
Yeah.
Now, if he's had a chance to view the batters for 5 or 6 innings, it's going to give him a great advantage, Charlton, over those guys in the lineup. Plus, he's going to be bringing some heat. You know, normally a starter starts to slow down about the 6th or 7th inning.
Yeah.
But you're bringing Kershaw in, who's been one of the more dominant pitchers in baseball over the past couple of years, Charlton. So it adds a bit of fuel to the Dodgers' luster to be able to do that.
Yeah.
So it would be an advantage bringing him out of the bullpen and having him challenge the lineup in the late innings of the game, Charlton.
Well, speaking of challenging the lineup in the late innings of the game, Big C, this segment is also sponsored by your California Lottery, Big C. And I love seeing what a buck can do for you. But, you know, sometimes you keep swinging that bat, you keep swinging it, and you're striking out. But, you know, what do they say? You keep swinging, Big C. So I keep buying these tickets. I haven't won anything yet. Have you won anything? You just haven't told me about it, Big C. I know you good old boys are very secretive. You guys are kind of like Wells Fargo Bank. You open accounts without people even knowing, Big C.
Well, you know, the CEO of Wells Fargo is going to take a long vacation, but he's going to be well compensated for it, Charlton.
$148 million
in compensation for being a thief.
Yeah.
That's not a bad payday. That's Donald Trump type of money. You go out and you steal money from the public, put up false accounts like Donald Trump does.
Yeah.
You borrow money from this person to pay money. You know, I'll take it to Donald Trump's taxes, Charlton. Yeah. Nobody can lose $1 billion. Donald Trump didn't have $1 billion to lose.
Right.
The money he claimed that he lost was money that he borrowed from other banks, Charlton.
Wow.
So he's claiming a loss on other people's money that he doesn't have to pay back. He didn't lose $1 billion. He fortunately moved $1 billion is what he did.
Yeah.
But, you know, the former CEO of Wells Fargo, after bilking thousands and thousands of people, and also the state of California.
No, they bilked 2 million people.
Going on a hiatus.
It was 2 million people, Big C. 2 million fake accounts, and they fired over 5,000 people because they did not lie and cheat enough. Is that egregious? And I don't think he's even talking to a DA. There's not even any talk of him going to prison, Big C, like Milken did back in the days. If he were a young African-American boy, what do you think Giuliani and Donald Trump would say about him right now, Big C?
Charlton, if he was a young African-American, he would have went to prison over 2 accounts.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true.
2 million, 2 accounts. Two fraudulent accounts.
Yeah.
I mean, mail fraud, kiting of funds, fraud, forgery, all of these things.
Yeah.
These are all federal offenses, Charlton.
Yeah.
And this man is walking scot-free with $140 million in his pocket.
Yeah, and I think about the people who are protesting and saying that, Black lives matter, white lives matter, Native American lives matter, whatever lives, all lives matter. But I just want to bring to everyone's mind, and we talked about it about 2 weeks ago. In fact, ESPN just hit on it today, but we were there 2 weeks ago. There's a documentary called 13th. And I think everyone should see it, because when you talk about protesting and a silent protest and peaceful protest, it should be every school teacher and every college professor, they should have their students watch the documentary 13th. I know a lot of people won't watch it in politics because it's too painful, because it's real, Big C. But it's called 13th. It's a documentary. You can watch it on Netflix. It only takes about an hour. If you watch it, I want you to watch that if you can, and then take a look at what happens in our criminal justice system and why this guy takes over $148 million to walk away in the sunshine, Big C. It's just egregious. But also, speaking of the world of sports, we'll get on to a little bit of what happened in the world of hockey, because we've been talking about Canada, Big C, and I think they're going to put me on probation again for messing up the Canadian national anthem. So I'm going to try to sing it in Spanish so they won't know if I'm saying it right or wrong, Big C. But I just want to get into the Maple Leafs last night. Matthew actually had 4 goals in 39 minutes for the Toronto Maple Leafs. Your thought on why hockey is so huge in Canada, but it's even big in the United States. So what is it about Canada that makes hockey like the NFL for them, Big C?
Well, it's always been the dominant country for hockey, Charlton. When you look at the rich history of the NHL, the Canadian teams were part of the original 6, up north of the border. And it's just been their heritage. And when you think about Matthews, who was the overall #1 pick in the NHL draft, he was inducted into the Hall of Fame last night, Charlton. When you think about it, in his first NHL game, he scored 4 goals. That's the first time in history it's ever been done. Gordie Howe, Wayne Gretzky, Bobby Hull, none of the great ones ever did that, Charlton. But he scored 4 goals, single goals last night in his initial hockey game. And so that puck and that uniform's going to the NHL Hall of Fame. And just a great night. Unfortunately, Toronto lost the game in overtime. But, it's a great start for hockey. And tonight will be the opening game for the NHL champions, Charlton, the Penguins. They'll be having their ring ceremony and opening up at home tonight. And, I don't think they'll win that game because they'll have spent too much time celebrating. But hockey now is in full flare. The NHL is back from frozen pond, Chubbs.
Well, Big C, I think those Penguins better be careful when they go down south, because you good old boys like to hunt. And I'm sure the good old boys, when you said Penguins, sometimes I got to be careful if you're talking about the real Penguins that you good old boys hunt, Big C, or the hockey team. But I just want to also say that the San Jose Sharks last night, they got a 2-1 victory over the LA Kings down in San Jose. So a great night for hockey starting off all over the country, Big C. But I do want to get on a little bit of what we love most, and I know that you guys love Alabama football, but I want to talk a little bit just about the NFL we have right now. A game that could be an upset in the making, because Denver finally lost the game, Big C, and sometimes when you lose a game at home and you have to go on the road against a team that desperately needs to win, the San Diego Chargers tonight. And if you've ever seen their uniforms for the Thursday night games, they look spectacular, Big C. That blue, the all blue pants, and also the jerseys up top, they look good. Is that a game where, think about this now. I know Denver's a great team, but the Chargers, all their losses, they've come within about 4 points, Big C. This is a game that it could be a surprise game against the Denver Broncos. Any chance of an upset down at Jack Murphy Stadium, Big C, tonight?
Well, Simeon is supposed to play tonight at quarterback for the Denver Broncos, which make a huge difference offensively. But you think about Phillip Rivers. He's been the consummate professional. He's going to have to try to take the Chargers on his back. This is a team that has been snake bit, much as the Cleveland Browns, Charlton. They've had a plethora of injuries in the early part of the season. And that's the key in the NFL. You've heard Ben Roethlisberger crying about the injuries with the Pittsburgh Steelers, saying that practice is too hard, even though he wears a pink shirt in practice.
It's not his fault. It's not his fault. He met Allen Iverson, and that's all that was, Big C. He and Allen Iverson may have been hanging out a little bit, so I can understand.
The same state, Charlton. They're both in the state of Pennsylvania.
Exactly.
Practice. What are you talking about, practice?
That's true.
The Chargers have had some unfortunate games this year, Charlton. They've been competitive. They just haven't gotten over the hump. Denver is trying to desperately get back on track after being beat by Atlanta soundly last week. So this is going to be a very interesting contest for the bracketing in the AFC West. Denver and Oakland are tied. No one expected Oakland to be tied with Denver 5 games into the season, but they are. So Denver really can't afford to drop this game if they want to keep pace with the Oakland Raiders, Charlton.
And the scary part about that game, Big C, Denver's favored by 3 by Las Vegas, has them a 3-point favorite. The over-under is only 45. We know that San Diego, they can throw the ball, and I think without Denver having their starting quarterback, this is a game that has upset written all over it, especially if Phillip Rivers can get into the zone tonight, Big C. That's a game I would not be surprised at all if the Chargers get a win and the Raiders find themselves in first place as Kansas City comes rolling into town. And also, I just want to touch on, we talk about it all the time, and again, you go back to the Oakland Raiders. I think Las Vegas, the state, the governor of Las Vegas, I think they came up with $750 million. I think they have the money to guarantee it. Now, I hear two different things. One side I'm hearing of the media is that the NFL owners are not behind it, but people like Jerry Jones and some of the other owners are behind them going to Las Vegas Big C. They've already talking about building $1 billion plus stadium. I think that will price out a lot of the people who work for tips in Las Vegas Big C. But there's something sexy about business owners flying into the city of Las Vegas. We know it's a kind of a young boy or a good old boy's mecca for entertainment and fun, Big C. And I don't think they go into Las Vegas so they can pray, unless you're people like, Donald Trump. He'll go down there and get on his knees and pray, Big C. Pray that people don't believe what they see, that they'll listen to what they hear, what that comes out of his mouth, Big C. But your thought again, does it seem like it's more real that the Raiders may actually go to Las Vegas? I think that'd be a crime for all the Raider fans in the Northern California. Your thoughts?
Well, it would be a crime for professional sports as a whole, Charlton.
Yeah.
The only thing that would make this plausible, is that all NFL games played in Las Vegas would have to go off the sports book. You cannot bet on them in Las Vegas.
That's not going to happen.
Some semblance of reality to the game, that the game would not be tarnished or swayed by money on the side, Charlton. So
yeah.
It would be like college sports in the state of Nevada. You can't bet on UNLV. You can't bet on Nevada, Reno. You can't bet on those college games in the state of Nevada.
Yeah.
And they would have to put that same moratorium on the NFL if the Raiders, by chance, some frivolous chance, move to Las Vegas, and all Raider home games could not be bet on in Nevada casinos, Charlton.
Yeah, and I think Big C, money rules out. I mean, money does rule out. I just think it's horrific that you have Davis, and I know his father did it too. The great Al Davis, the late Al Davis, took the Raiders down to Southern California. They were talking about going to the city of industry, and then they were talking about Inglewood. Now there is money for a stadium in Los Angeles, but the Rams beat them to the punch. I just think you have a team that's on the uptick in the Oakland Raiders. They have 3 Super Bowl championships in their past, Big C, and I just think it'd be a sad thing for the Bay Area to leave when they're peaking again, Big C.
I've always looked at, with these professional franchises moving and these cities having to fund these professional billionaires that have these sports teams and building these elaborate arenas.
Yeah.
And why do you put so much money into a sports franchise? And you said, well, it creates jobs. It creates no more new jobs other than infrastructure, because those same people that were in that old stadium working are going to be in that new stadium working.
Yeah.
Why can't you put that many funds towards education? Look at the Falcons just getting a new stadium. 20-year-old Georgia Dome. Also, the Braves getting a new stadium. That stadium was built for the '96 Olympics.
Yeah.
You look around in professional sports, and cities are being forced to build new arenas. They're in Sacramento, the Golden One Arena.
Yeah.
In San Francisco, the new arena for the Warriors.
Yeah.
Why are cities being held ransom to build new arenas? It's about luxury boxes, Charlton. It's about money. Oracle Arena seated, 20,000 people?
Yeah, 20,000 people.
In Oakland?
Yeah.
Well, how many more people do you get in an arena? So all it's about is building luxury taxes and luxury boxes for those owners to control the revenue. Seattle lost a franchise in basketball. They went to Oklahoma City.
Yeah.
Who in the hell want to live in Oklahoma City, Charlton, basketball-wise?
Russell Westbrook, I think.
Nobody wants to come into the town and hang out.
Wait, Russell Westbrook likes it.
Beautiful Northwestern street.
Yeah.
And they left over an arena, Charlton. The greed of ownership now in professional sports is unparalleled. They're billionaires. They're making money hand over fist. They're controlling players. They're making revenue off of everything. Jerseys, signatures, games, television, gate parking.
Yeah.
When is enough? I understand America's about free enterprise.
Yeah.
But it's also about sharing, giving back to some communities, lowering the price of tickets so fans can come. And speaking about tickets, Charlton, there was a fan on StubHub.
Yeah.
Put in a bid and actually bought the tickets for Game 5 of the World Series in Chicago, planning on the Cubs to be there. For 4 tickets, Charlton, he paid $71,800.
My goodness.
For 4 tickets for a Cubs 5th game World Series. That's an astronomical number, Charlton. Why can't we put that type of effort towards education, solving social problems in America, and creating eliminating this racial divide we have.
Well, Big C, I think that's crazy. 71,000. I mean, obviously he has the kind of money to do that. If he were down, how much moonshine could he buy with $71,000? Actually, or make with $71,000, Big C? I think the guy needs to learn how to invest his money in the right place. I think that's how the Kennedys got rich, didn't they? The moonshine was the Kennedy grandfather moonshine and Big C. Is that what he was doing?
Well, Charlton, we can get him several barrels at a little cut rate on that. I mean, we sell it by volume, and we'll need reduced price. In 71, he would have got some change back from it.
Hey, I'm telling you, that stuff is like truth serum. All you got to do is give Donald Trump some moonshine. He'll start telling the truth this time. I just think it's it's ridiculous. I heard Donald Trump say, we heard him on TV saying about grabbing women by their private parts, and when you're rich, they'll let you do it. You get away with it. He was married at the time, and that's how he rolls. Nothing wrong with that. So you have him.
You said he was married at the time. He was groping these women. Charlton.
Yeah, but that's his wife's the way they like.
Not only that, let me give you a piece of history that's real.
Yeah.
His first wife, Ivanka.
Yeah.
During their divorce, filed criminal charges against Donald Trump, saying allegedly that he raped her.
Yeah, I heard about that.
This went to court, Charlton.
Yeah.
That he raped his initial wife during a divorce proceeding.
Yeah.
So he has a history of it, not just women in public, but even in his own family, of raping his wife, Charlton. And people say, well, it's consensual. No, it's not.
Yeah.
No means no. When a woman says no, it's no.
Yeah.
Don't do that.
It is out there in the papers.
It's illegal.
Yeah.
Donald Trump has a history of it. And, I would love for any backer of Donald Trump, whether it's a sports figure, whether it's a public figure, take your daughter or your sister over to Donald Trump, lock her in a room with him, and walk away for an hour.
Yeah.
And say whatever he does to her is okay because it's Donald Trump. And he's going to turn America around.
Yeah.
He's going to allow rape and not paying taxes in America.
Well, Giuliani is one of those good old boys backing them also. And I just want to say this segment is sponsored by United Labor, guaranteed $100,000 life insurance with no medical questions. And also, we are also endorsed by the American Heart Association and the American Cancer Society. And we're also looking to employ over 1,000 licensed insurance brokers to help put people back to work. So tweet out to Charlton and Big C Sports on the iHeartRadio network. If you're looking for work, again, no medical questions. If you've been turned down, tweet out to Charlton and Big C Sports. We just want to put people back to work. Not also, Big C, when you think about something that happens in the world of sports, and we talked about Trump and we talked about Giuliani, I still want to tell everyone what we were saying about 2 weeks ago. Watch the documentary 13th. It's just about an hour. It's on Netflix. It's worth a lesson in American history. You got to watch it, especially when you understand the world that we live in with the prison industrial complex. Guys like Donald Trump with his search and frisk running for office and the former Mayor Giuliani running for office. Please watch it, okay? Watch it no matter what color you are. If you call yourself an American, please watch that. And also, Big C, talking about being an American, we talk about the world of college football, and we'll touch on a little bit of college football because the rankings will be coming out pretty soon, Big C. There's this thing about what conference is the best conference. Is it the SEC down in your neck of the woods, or is it the Big Ten? I think Ohio State's the best team in the country, and I think even Michigan might be number 2 with Alabama coming in at 3 just because they don't give up as many points on defense. But what's your thought on maybe the top conference in the country, and then why, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, I really like what the Big Ten has done this year and the past couple of years.
Yeah.
Well, when you look at the history of coaches in the Big Ten, they don't have that huge spread of in the SEC.
Yeah.
The SEC is a conference where coaches are waiting to get fired. And when you look at Urban Meyer, who leads the pack, this coach, Charlton, in 15 years, if he wins on Saturday, he's won 166 games. You think about that.
Yeah. 166
games in 15 years as a coach. That would be the time record that's held by Bob Stoops.
Yeah.
Of that many games over that tenure.
Yeah.
And he hasn't even completed the season, so by the season's end, he will set a record with over 107 wins, Charlton, in 15 years. But you also look at Jim Harbaugh with the success he's had at San Diego, at Stanford, the 49ers, and now turning around this Michigan program really in a year and a half.
Yeah.
Has it in national power, becoming challenging for playoff position.
Yeah.
You look at Wisconsin. Wisconsin was a team that was sluggish a couple decades ago until Barry Alvarez took over. Took them to a couple consecutive Rose Bowls, Big Ten titles, and he's a solid program. You look at Mike D'Antoni, who has had 6 10-plus game winning seasons at Michigan State.
Yeah.
That's a solid program. They just happen to be the second best team in their state. Look at Kurt Ferentz in Iowa, who won the Big Ten title last year, losing to Michigan State in the championship game of the Big 12.
Yeah.
But, the SEC has basically been dominated by one team, Alabama. Every now and then, A&M raises up its head. Tennessee's been up and down like a yo-yo the past decade, ever since T. Martin won the national championship down there.
Yeah.
But there really hasn't been a solid presence across the board in the SEC. Florida, who knows what they're going to do since Steve Spurrier and Urban Myers left that program. They haven't been a dominant power.
Well,
so when you look at the SEC, Kirby Smart's new at Georgia, and he hasn't done anything to light the world on fire. Actually, Mark Richt has a better record down in Miami than what Kirby Smart has in Florida. So this is a conference that's constantly changing. Steve Spurrier is no longer at South Carolina.
He walked away from South Carolina football.
Of the Big 12, the Big, what is it, the Big 13?
They have 14, 15, 17. They got a lot of teams, Big C. Hey, math doesn't matter up north, Big C. It's too cold to count, Big C. Too cold.
But, this conference has evolved, to me, to be the dominant conference in the U.S., Charlton. When you just look at the stability of the head coaches and how they stay ranked, actually, with 4 teams in the top 10, I think even the pollsters think, Charlton, this is the best conference in America.
Yeah, I think when you look at teams that send, the conferences that send players on to the NFL the most, I think you have to look at the SEC. In the Pac-12, you look at programs that are spread out so far from Washington up north to Arizona and Arizona State down south, as far east as Utah now. And so that's a big stretch. But most of those SEC teams are all clustered around that same hot pool of talent in the deep southeast Big C. Even Michigan goes down south to recruit. And in fact, some of your hot high school programs around the country, there's one called St. Thomas Aquinas out of Florida. There's one called IMG out of Florida. They're very dominant programs. Bradenton High School of Florida, and we know they have some good programs down there. In California, you have De La Salle, and you have your modern day programs at St. John Bosco's. And even over in Las Vegas, you have Bishop Gorman. So some of the hottest high school programs in the country, they know they're feeder schools for these bigger conferences now, Big C. Up north, you have Cincinnati Moeller, you have St. Xavier out of Cincinnati, Ohio, Glenville out of Ohio, too. And, of course, there's the great Berwick High School out of the great state of Pennsylvania. So when you look at some of the top college programs, you can also find some of the top high school programs in the country, Big C. And that's the feeder schools for these programs. And that's why I think if you look at USC, they should always be in the mention, as well as Notre Dame as some of the hot college programs in the country, because they attract the hottest talent. And it's ironic we're talking about the top 2 conferences, and we don't even mention the Pac-12 when they've had a lot of programs in the Pac-12 that have sent a lot of players onto the NFL. What's happened to the swing to go down south and up north from the West Coast, Big C?
Well, Charlton, the South has always been dominant. They've been able to keep players at home.
Yeah.
That's the key. California is a feeder pool for the entire Pac-12 conference when you talked about those teams in Washington, Arizona, Utah, Oregon. They all bleed players out of California.
Yeah.
As well as players go nationally to Texas, to Ohio, to Florida. I mean, people leave California. It's the greatest thing in college to leave home and have that experience to grow in a new environment.
Yeah.
Some states, Texas, we look at the dominance of the high school programs in Texas.
Oh, yeah.
Even in the southern states, you talked about Georgia and Florida.
Yeah.
How these players, they can fish in their own backyard, and other schools have come in now and fishing in those pools also.
Yeah.
But, when you develop these players at a young age, and they can stay home and they can benefit, the local universities can benefit from them with free labor.
Yeah.
And, they stay dominant. When you look at Alabama's roster, you look at Auburn's roster, I'm going to say 80% of the players on both of those rosters are from the state of Alabama.
Yeah.
As well as with Georgia. You look at their roster. Look at Florida State, and those 2 schools, they don't have to go outside the state to recruit. They may bring in 10, 12 players from outside the state, but they're dominated by players in those states, Charlton. The high school programs have evolved in America so much over the past couple of decades with the weight programs, the nutrition programs, and having more experienced coaches. Other than just having a gym teacher, Charlton, they have true coaches that are there now for the betterment of the players and the program, other than just some guy out there stroking his ego.
Well, Big C, I know there's a couple of high schools down in the South. I think there's Valdosta, Georgia, one of the dominant programs. There's also a school called Grayson out of Georgia. They're very dominant. There's Trinity High School of Euless, Texas, and they're a dominant program. And again, up in California, there's so many programs, over 1,000 high schools in California. And when you start building up, even the great University of Colorado, they come out west to recruit. So you're right, a lot of kids are leaving the West Coast because some of the bigger cities, Los Angeles is such a big city. I guess a lot of kids do enjoy going to a smaller town environment and playing for programs like Utah or Colorado. And so that's some of the challenges they have at USC and UCLA, as well as Cal and Stanford.
Charlton, a big part of is what we've talked about, the social challenges also of these young men living in these cities. And if you go back and you remember a movie, Boys in the Hood, with Ice Cube, Cuba Gooding Jr., Lawrence Fishburne, Nina Long, where this young promising athlete from high school had a full ride scholarship to USC in this pictorial movie.
At Crenshaw High School, Los Angeles,
It was real life, Charlton. And he lost his life because of stupid gang violence. That, we're all fighting about. Everybody's talking about Black Lives Matter, but even in this movie, his life was lost from blacks.
I want to interject as you say that, Big C, and I want to put a call for all the kids, no matter what color you are, no matter what your social economic situation is. Stop trying to hurt each other, and let's stop making excuses. And also this foolish thing that kids call, I think it's called stop snitching, or something that's so stupid. Don't snitch. Listen, snitch on somebody who's hurting people in your community. Snitch on them. Get the bad guys out. We don't need that. And there'll be no tolerance for black on black crime. If we're going to complain about white on black crime, like police brutality, we got to also call out people, and we know they're doing dirt, Big C. I mean, people know if someone's doing dirt or not. I believe in snitching if someone's doing wrong. If you're going to do wrong, you should pay the price, Big C. Your thoughts on that, Big C?
Well, it's very true, Charlton. When you got these people talking about, I'm not going to be a snitch, I'm not going to help out the police.
Dumb.
But you'll cost somebody their life in this scenario, Charlton. That's what happens. And when you talk about Black Lives Matter, you have to be willing to protect Black lives. That's what you have to do. As a black person, you have to be willing to protect black lives. So when you talk about wearing gang colors and affiliation, you're not protecting black lives because you're out there in the mode and mentality to want to take black lives, Charlton. Protecting black lives is giving education, doing the right thing, as Spike Lee would say, do the right thing.
And by all means,
don't go out there thinking that you're being cool by not telling what's wrong in society.
I agree.
That's the reason why we have these loss of lives all the time, whether it's to police or gang violence, because people are not doing the right thing. In sports, if you know you have a teammate that's not doing the right thing, what do? You go to the coach about it. You let it be known. You voice it. You take him in the locker room. You voice it in the locker room. You're going to have to straighten out. But, if you're not helping this organization win, then you need to go, because the organization is more important than the individual.
I agree.
And they have to look at the black culture is more important than the individual. They don't want to snitch.
I agree. And please, and I know people are they're gonna tell me to shut up. They're gonna tell me to sit down and shut up, Big C. But please pull your pants up. I'm so tired of seeing grown men. I'm talking about men in their 40s and 50s walking around and their underwear are hanging out. And I don't care what color they are. I see it in all colors, black and white. But that's just the dumbest behavior. And I know a lot of people think it's cool. But if that's cool, have your grandparents walk around with their underwear hanging out. It's such a low-class way of dressing and behaving. And I'm saying it, I hope that all of us can have at least the respect for our parents if you can't respect yourself. And speaking for respect, Big C, this last segment is sponsored by One Life America Life Insurance. We're the leaders in the country when it comes to final expense. I'm also looking to hire over 1,000 individuals to sell life insurance to help protect American families, and also by BeneathHisWingsFoundation.org and CYNN Entertainment when it comes to promotion. Cynthia Evans, she's the best in Northern California. Big C, I just want to clear it out on this segment here before we close out this show. I know we talked about...
Let me go back to that point you were just making. You're talking about young men pulling up their pants. How would you feel if you were at a restaurant and your waiter or waitress came out with your entree pulling up their pants and their pants hanging down below the butt? How would you feel if your dentist walked into the chair with his pants hanging down and he had to pull them up without washing his hands? How would you feel if your doctor came in with a tongue depressor getting ready to put it in your mouth, pulling up on his pants? How would you feel? It is not only embarrassing and pathetic, but it's unsanitary, Charlton, because you got everything hanging out. Show some decent respect. And, if a lawyer walked into a courtroom, a judge would admonish him for doing that. You don't see Wall Street walking around like that, Charlton, and they're highly successful people. They make a lot of money legally.
Yeah, but Wall Street, they also have the cocaine issues, Big C, but that's a white crime, and we know that goes on, but it's not talked about as much.
Regardless of the race, pull up your damn pants.
Yeah,
it doesn't make sense. I'm still trying to figure out who the hell came out with this as being fashionable or swag, whatever they go.
Dumb people, Big C.
Somebody needs to sit these people down and say, hey, this is the proper time. But also, Charlton, there's freedom of speech, which we fight against in America and fight for. They allow it in the school, and if it's in the education system, Charlton, it's going to be a part of people's lives.
Well, Big C, I agree, but I'm going to call it old school because I have no tolerance. I was raised with more class, and in fact, if you're just too dumb to understand you shouldn't be walking around with your underwear hanging out, at least do it for your grandparents, if you even care about that, Big C. So the last question I want to get on, Big C, is we have this great baseball game happening tonight on the East Coast in the state in Washington, D.C. It's a great environment. You have the East Coast versus the West Coast thing, the Dodgers and the Nationals. I just want to get your thought again. I know you're down south. You guys are probably playing football practice at Alabama anyway. Tell Nick Saban, let the boys at least watch the baseball game, Big C. He'll probably say no, Big C, but just your thoughts again on who might win this game and then why. Your thoughts, Big C. Go right ahead, sir.
Well, I would love to see Dusty Baker make it to the NFC Championship, NL Championship game.
Yeah.
I think it's great for baseball to have him in it.
Yeah.
To be represented by a minority at this stage.
Yeah.
To show that there's equality in the game as far as the ability to manage being in that game on a professional level.
Yeah.
That's what we need more of, and he's well deserved.
Yeah.
I mean, whoever gets there, Charlton, is going to be facing a great team in the Cubs. This is a team that seems to be a team of destiny.
Yeah.
And not sliding any other team, but you got to root for the Cubs regardless of who they're playing because you want to see history in our lifetime.
Yeah.
And that's the Cubs winning a World Series.
Well, Big C, I think no matter who you're pulling for, whether you're pulling for the Cubs or the Indians or the Blue Jays or the Nationals, baseball, this is what baseball is. This is why I love Charlton and Big C Sports. I love bringing sports, and I love bringing some consciousness and some intelligence to a sports program. There are a lot of smart people out there, black and white. I think one thing that the sports business can do is it can bring people together. It's a galvanizing business. There's nothing greater than the world of sports. In my opinion, broadcast radio and sports radio, you hit every emotion from the thrill of victory to the agony of defeat, and that's what I love so much about the sports business, Big C. I love doing it on iHeartRadio Network. I love that we're the #1 sports program in the universe, intergalactic, Big C, voted by you good old boys with no hanging chads, Big C, no hanging chads on this vote, Big C. And again, iHeart. Just a moonshine, Big C. And we are on iHeartRadio, the #1 media company in the world. So I want to tell everyone, go and enjoy the game. Go and watch some great baseball. Cheer for your team. And you young boys, keep your pants up. Donald Trump, don't grab women when they don't want to be grabbed, Big C. And for all you women that think it's okay, man, God bless you. But I want to tell you, no violence against women. And grabbing women in the crotch is an act of violence. It's assault. I don't think it's funny. If you see any woman in trouble, call 911, even if they're being grabbed by someone like Donald Trump. Just because you're rich doesn't mean you can get away with crimes with impunity. Every Monday through Friday at 5 o'clock p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Worldwide, follow Charlton and Big C Sports on the iHeartRadio Network. And as we always say on every broadcast, we thank you, we appreciate you, and we hope that you have a super fantastic day.